Hello, Annabel. Thank you so
Hi,
much
Eleanor.
for agreeing to this interview. Would you like to give us a short introduction to yourself?
No problem. Hello, my name's Annabel. I'm an educator, artist, and researcher. I'm from London, uh, and I have family lineages from Indonesia and Ireland. I started supporting and advocating for disabled people long before I learnt that I'm disabled myself. I received a few diagnoses between 2015 and 2016, after which I learned that I'm neurodivergent and I have a condition that causes me chronic pain and fatigue. My work spans the further and higher education sectors, as well as charitable organisations and social care services. So I think that's me in a little snapshot.
What do you think of Disability History Month, if anything?
Interesting question. Um, Personally, I'm not sure about the construct of history months, but I understand why they exist and why they are important to so many people. Um, the histories of disabled people are really important to me in terms of identifying my own lineages and working to understand how our communities and our practices have reached the current moment. Um, my own family, my own families have disability histories that I'm still trying to surface, and it's difficult because of shame and stigma in so many communities, including my own. Um, to me, as someone who studied history, history as an academic discipline has to be proactively interrogated in a few ways. So I have to ask, who's recorded this? What's their historical and material relationship to the communities and the events that are involved? I think we need that critical perspective on history at all times, and particularly on disability history. I understand history is a living, breathing thing, constantly changing shape and never really fixed in place. So I suppose Disability History Month is a key time to to challenge the histories that invisibilize and pathologize disabled people, and to deconstruct those histories or reshape them.
And how has being disabled impacted on you as a person of color, or your identity as a person of color on being a disabled person?
Ooh. Um, so I am a disabled person of colour, and I'm also adjacent to whiteness, having very light skin. So I'm in an interesting position, and probably quite an unsurprising one, in that I'm often subjected to attempts to co-opt me into white disability narratives. At the same time as understanding on a personal level that disabled people don't live single issue lives. Our experiences are deeply intersectional and impacted by so many things, in particularly, the ways that we're racialized in like a Western context. I'd say my relationship to being disabled has so many layers to it, because even the way that I would describe it in different languages is quite different. Defined by, for example, if I describe myself in Indonesian, I'm probably talking to Indonesian people, and the cultural context of those narratives is quite different, particularly in terms of my own family histories and how complex they are, and how bound up in stigma and shame they are. So I'd say, in terms of the effect on me, it's made me both advocate for narratives outside of whiteness in disabled people spaces, and with across disabled people's advocacy. But it also means that I advocate for consideration of disabled people of colour in spaces where the narratives and experiences of people of colour are being surfaced. I always try to bring those intersections together, as well as others that I don't personally experience, because I have just been in too many places where those single issue experiences are brought to the surface, and it doesn't really account for those of us that are both disabled and of colour. So I'd say it makes things complex, but actually it's brought me a much more nuanced, not necessarily understanding, but a more nuanced exploration of those different parts of myself, and the encouragement to others to look at things in that nuanced way, to examine things in that nuanced way.
Thank you, Annabel. Do you want to add to that, or are you happy with that?
I think that's all good. Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to share my 2 pence.
Thank you, Annabel.